Okay, let's dive in. If you're running an organization today, you know you're moving just vast amounts of sensitive data around constantly.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking terabytes, sometimes even petabytes,
hmm
flowing between partners, customers, inside your own network.
Right, using managed file transfer, MFT, those systems built for, secure, reliable data movement, business to business, internal stuff.
And every single one of those transfers, every file is a potential target,
Okay.
keeping that fire hose of data secure. It's absolutely critical.
It really is. But the challenge, and it's a big one, is the sheer scale and the complexity of it all.
Yeah, the traditional security methods, things like static perimeter defenses, rules based on known signatures, they're really struggling to keep up.
It feels like trying to defend a fortress with guards who only recognize attackers from, like, last year's wanted poster.
That's a good way to put it. They're looking backwards. And
Oh.
that reliance on static known threats, it creates this huge headache for security teams.
Alert fatigue. I hear that term constantly.
Exactly. They're just drowning in alerts, queues
Oh.
full of them. Most turn out to be noise, false positives.
But they absolutely cannot afford to miss that one signal in the noise. The one that indicates a real attack is happening.
Because the attackers, they're agile, they're sophisticated now, static rules are inherently reactive, they're always a step behind.
The threats evolve too fast. They use slightly different malware, new IP addresses, unexpected pathways.
Subtle precursors, things that a rule looking for a specific fixed signature will just never ever see.
So if the old ways aren't really cutting it anymore, what's the answer? How do we secure this massive flow of data against threats we might not even know exist yet?
Well, that's where a really powerful emerging approach comes into play. Predictive security.
Yeah.
And it's powered by artificial intelligence.
AI. Okay.
And that's the heart of what we're digging into today. We've been looking closely at a really insightful article by David Heath. It's titled Predictive Security for File Transfers.
Ah, David Heath. Yeah, his piece really gets straight to the core of this challenge, doesn't it? And it presents a compelling way forward.
It does.
So our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack his insights. We want to understand exactly how AI is changing MFT security, like fundamentally.
And why it's proving so effective where those traditional methods seem to fall short.
Right. And crucially, what are the measurable business benefits? What does implementing this actually look like? What's the real quantifiable ROI?
Let's start right where David Heath does by looking a bit closer at the limits of those yesterday's defenses. As he details it, traditional perimeter defenses have really two main weaknesses in this MFT context.
Okay, weakness number one.
It's what we touched on. Those rules only flag known bad indicators.
Right. Blocking a known virus hash or a specific IP address that's on a plaque list. But if the attacker tweaks the malware slightly, uses a fresh IP...
The rule is blind. It just doesn't see it, which leads directly to the second problem, which is often, frankly, more debilitating.
Overwhelming alert queues.
Exactly. Security analysts spend countless hours just sifting through alerts from static rules or very basic threshold triggers, like alert if volume exceeds X.
And if 99% of what they see is noise, a false positive, or just low priority stuff.
That crucial alert, the high-fidelity signal, it gets buried, lost in the flood.
And David Heath really hammers this point home, why static rules just aren't enough against modern threats. They can't spot those subtle attack precursors.
Because those actions, maybe individually, don't match a predefined bad signature. The attackers aren't always using the exact same tools or commands.
They adapt, they use legitimate tools, but, illegitimately. Or they chain together actions that seem harmless on their own.
And this is precisely where AI flips the script. Instead of only looking for known bad signatures, these modern AI engines train on what David Heath calls the organization's specific behavioral pulse.
The behavioral pulse, I like that phrase. It sounds organic.
It is, in a way. It's not about having a fixed list of bad things. It's about the AI developing a deep, nuanced understanding of what is normal behavior for your specific MFT environment.
So it learns my normal, not some generic normal.
Exactly. Think of it like the system building this highly detailed statistical model of your typical MFT activity. It uses machine learning, looking at historical data.
What kind of data?
Things like, what are the usual volumes of data transferred to specific partners? Which protocols do you typically use for different transfer types? What are the normal times of day for data flows? Even the frequency and size of certain file types moving between specific endpoints.
Wow. Okay, so it really learns the intricate dance of your legitimate data flows.
That's the idea. It gets a baseline for that behavioral pulse.
Okay, that makes sense. It learns normal for me.
Yeah.
But hang on, legitimate behavior can change, right? You onboard new partners, maybe transfer schedule shift.
Good question.
Is there a risk that AI just flags every legitimate change as suspicious? How does it handle that evolution?
That's a critical point. And a good AI model built for this isn't static either. It has to continuously learn and adapt to your evolving patterns too.
Ah.
What it's really watching for is statistically significant drift or anomalies, deviations away from that learned normal behavior that is statistically unlikely.
Statistically significant. That's the key phrase.
It is. It's looking for shifts that fall outside the expected range of variability for your organization's pulse. So maybe a brand new pattern initially gets flagged as a low confidence anomaly. But if it repeats consistently, the AI learns it as part of the new normal.
So it's not just any change, it's sudden, unexplained shifts or weird combinations of events.
Exactly. Things that look very different from the established norm, especially when multiple unusual factors occur together.
This is where it gets really interesting because David Heath gives some concrete examples in the article. These make it much clearer.
Yes, they do. These examples perfectly illustrate the kind of subtlety that static rules just completely miss.
Okay, give me one.
All right, one he mentions is an outbound data stream. It's going to a legitimate trading partner. The destination is correct, the protocol used is normal,
Sounds fine so far.
but the volume is suddenly 5 times the normal amount for that specific partner connection.
So a static rule just checking partner or protocol would say. Okay.
Green light.
Yeah.
But the AI sees a massive deviation in the behavioral pulse, specifically in the volume dimension, for that connection. That's highly anomalous.
Okay, that makes sense. What's another one?
Or this one. Credentials being replayed into a partner mailbox. Now, this mailbox is very seldomly used, and the activity happens at, say, 2:00 a.m. Individually, maybe none of those things are unique. Credential replay happens, old mailboxes exist, transfers occur at night.
But the combination.
Exactly. The combination of the method, credential replay, the unusual target, seldom used mailbox, and the odd timing. It's a stark deviation from the norm for that specific partner endpoint. It paints a very suspicious picture that the AI flags immediately.
That's clever. It's connecting dots that a simple rule wouldn't.
And there's a final example he gives, which is particularly concerning. Imagine a burst of small archive files.
Like zip files or something.
Yeah, exactly. Small archive files suddenly heading towards a Tor exit node.
Okay, Tor exit node, that's usually not good for enterprise traffic.
Right. And this happens just seconds after an RDP session, a remote desktop session, is open to a server on the network.
RDP, so someone logged in remotely.
Correct. Now, RDP can be legitimate admin access. But seeing that remote access immediately followed by unusual file activity, specifically archive files, which are often used to compress data for exfiltration, and heading to an anonymized network exit like Tor.
That sequence sounds bad. Really bad, like initial compromise, data gathering, and attempt to sneak it out.
That's exactly what it suggests. And the AI picks up on that sequence of correlated events, even if each individual step might seem borderline if viewed in isolation by a simpler system.
What's really incredible, though, is the speed. The article mentions these kinds of complex deviations can surface within seconds of them happening.
Seconds.
That's just a world away from security teams maybe finding weird logs hours or even days later trying to piece things together manually.
That speed is arguably the single most critical advantage. Early detection is everything in mitigating damage. David Heath points to a benchmark from IBM's Flash System Defender.
Okay.
Noting it, machine learning can detect ransomware encryption attempts the moment files actually start getting locked up in less than 60 seconds.
Less than a minute to spot ransomware starting its dirty work. That's wow.
It's detection time in seconds, rather than the minutes or hours it might take otherwise. It's a game changer for response.
Huge difference.
Exactly. And other models, like those from Darktrace, which Heath also mentions in the context of network behavior, they're designed to spot even earlier signs. Things like initial command and control traffic or lateral movement before the attacker even gets to the encryption or data theft stage.
So detecting the setup, not just the attack itself.
Yes, detecting that reconnaissance and internal movement minutes before the final payload deploys. That gives security teams an absolutely precious head start.
Those few minutes, that could be the difference between containing it to one machine versus the whole network getting hit.
It absolutely can. Isolating one system versus dealing with a full-blown ransomware incident or massive data exfiltration. It's a critical window of opportunity.
So this isn't just theory then. Where are companies actually seeing this predictive tech show up? Is it like a separate box they have to buy? Or is it getting built into the tools they already use?
That's a key point David Heath makes.
Yeah.
This technology is moving beyond just standalone platforms. Increasingly, it's being embedded directly into the MFT gateways themselves.
Ah, so the system you're already using for secure file transfer might get this capability added on.
Potentially, yes, as an add-on module or an integrated feature.
He mentions IBM Sterling B2B integration sauce as an example, offering an AI-enhanced anomaly detection option.
Right. And that example is important because it shows how it works in practice. This AI layer runs alongside all the traditional checks, protocol validation, encryption checks, maybe even signature scanning if you're still doing that.
So it adds another layer of scrutiny.
Yes. The gateway isn't just verifying that the transfer follows the basic rules. It's also asking, does the behavior of this transfer look normal compared to our learned pulse?
And if it detects something suspicious, something anomalous with high confidence,
It can take immediate action,
like what? What kind of action?
like automatically quarantining the suspicious transfer,
So stopping it?
stopping it dead in its tracks in real time. The potentially malicious data flow is halted, while legitimate traffic to other partners, other endpoints, continues completely unaffected.
Okay, so it stops the threat first.
And then it raises a high confidence alert for the security team to investigate the transfer it just quarantined.
That sounds like it directly tackles that false positive paralysis issue we talked about, instead of drowning in low-level noise.
Exactly. You get fewer alerts overall, but the ones you do get are much higher confidence, and often the system has already taken the initial containment step.
But that makes sense. It interrupts the potential damage immediately.
Precisely. It ensures that when a genuine violation or a malicious behavior is spotted, it's interrupted in real time, preventing data theft or damage, without constantly stopping the business by blocking legitimate transfers based on weak signals. The focus shifts to empowering the security team to investigate real, contained issues.
Okay, technically and operationally, that sounds compelling. But let's shift gears to the business case. What's the quantifiable return on investment? How does an organization justify the cost of adding this predictive layer?
This is where David Heath really connects the dots to the bottom line, using our numbers, and you have to start with breach economics.
The cost of getting hit.
Right. He references IBM's 2024 cost of a data breach report. The average global cost of a single data breach incident, a staggering $4.88 million.
Wow. Nearly $5 million average. That's an enormous potential hit.
It's huge. And the IBM report also has this critical insight. Organizations that detect threats internally, meaning they spot it themselves, rather than being told by, say, law enforcement or a customer whose data showed up somewhere. They cut that average breach cost significantly, by nearly $1 million.
$1 million difference just by finding it yourself. Why such a big difference?
Because internal detection, especially early internal detection, dramatically shortens the breach life cycle. That's the time from the initial compromise until it's contained. Finding it yourself typically cuts that life cycle by an average of 61 days.
61 days. So 2 months less time for an attacker to be rummaging around in your systems.
Exactly. That's a massive difference in the potential damage they can do, the data they can steal, the systems they can compromise.
And AI helps achieve that faster internal detection.
It's a key enabler. That ability to detect subtle precursors, those behavioral anomalies, in seconds or minutes, that directly translates into faster detection, converting minutes of early warning into potentially weeks of reduced attacker dwell time. That directly impacts the severity and therefore the cost of a breach. That's a major part of the ROI, the avoided loss.
Okay, so avoiding or shortening that catastrophic incident is huge. But it's not just about that, right? David Heath also talks about day-to-day operational savings.
Absolutely. That's the other side of the coin. Significant operational efficiencies. He references a Forrester study, actually, looking at Microsoft Sentinel.
Sentinel, that's a SIEM platform, right?
Yeah.
Broader than just MFT.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
But the fundamental math they did around alert triage time, forensic investigation hours, that translates really cleanly to the workload that Security Operations Center, the SOC teams, face when managing MFT security alerts.
Okay, so we can use the efficiency gains found in that SIEM study to understand the likely impact of AI on MFT security operations.
Precisely. And that Forrester study found a 79% reduction in false positives when using these kinds of advanced analytics.
79% fewer false positives. Just stop and think about that. Getting rid of almost 80% of the noise analysts have to chase down.
It's huge. That alone sounds like a complete game changer for analyst fatigue, right?
Totally.
And the downstream effect was an estimated 80% cut in the actual analyst effort required for investigation. Less noise means less time wasted.
So huge productivity gains. Analysts can focus on real threats, maybe more proactive stuff.
Exactly. Proactive hunting, hardening systems. The study concluded this delivered a 3-year ROI of 201%, with a payback period of under 6 months.
Wow. A 200% ROI and paying for itself in less than half a year. Those are incredibly strong numbers for any IT project, let alone security.
They really are. And David Heath takes this and illustrates how it might play out specifically for an MFT scenario with a simple model in his article.
Okay, let's walk through that model. What kind of company is he using as an example?
He pictures a typical enterprise, moving a pretty significant volume of sensitive data, maybe 200 terabytes a month via MFT.
Okay, decent size.
And he estimates a potential annual license cost for adding an AI anomaly detection module to their existing MFT gateway might be somewhere around, say, $200,000.
All right, so $200 a year investment. What are the potential returns over, let's say, 3 years in his model?
Okay, first, he looks at the potential savings from preventing or significantly shortening just one major data exfiltration breach over that 3-year period. Based on those IBM figures we discussed, avoiding or seriously mitigating just one incident like that could represent about a $1 million saving in direct breach costs.
Right, so avoiding just one big one in 3 years basically covers a huge chunk of the cost right there.
A very big chunk. Then he adds in the operational savings. Using that 79% alert reduction figure from the Forrester study.
The efficiency gains.
Right. He estimates this could reclaim about 3,000 analyst hours per year for an enterprise of this scale.
3,000 hours a year that were previously spent chasing noise.
Pretty much. And if you translate that into labor costs at typical SOC rates, that's roughly $300,000 per year in saved effort.
That's significant. That's potentially freeing up 1 or 2 analysts to do more valuable work.
Absolutely. So over the 3 years of his model, the total benefit is $1 million from the potential avoided breach loss, plus $900,000 from the staff efficiency gains, $300K times 3 years.
Okay, so $1.9 million total benefits.
Against a total cost over those 3 years of $600,000, $200K per year.
$1.9 million benefit versus $0.6 million cost. What's the ROI on that?
Doing the math, it comes out to an ROI near 216% over 3 years.
That's a really powerful justification. But David Heath makes another crucial point about this ROI calculation, doesn't he? Something I found really compelling.
He does, and I agree. It's perhaps the most important takeaway from his model. He emphasizes that even if you don't have a major security incident within that 3-year window,
Even if you don't prevent that $1 million breach.
right, even without that big win, the efficiency dividend alone, those saved analyst hours, that reduction in false positives puts the project very close to break even by year 2 just on its own.
Wow, okay, that's huge. So the value isn't solely dependent on dodging a bullet, averting a disaster. The day-to-day operational savings provide a significant, measurable return regardless.
Exactly. It really decouples the ROI conversation from needing a catastrophe to prove the value. It dramatically lowers the risk profile of making the investment decision.
Because you're not just buying insurance against a potential breach, you're also buying very real, tangible operational efficiency and an improved security posture at the same time.
That's it perfectly. You get immediate, ongoing benefits plus that critical risk reduction.
So for organizations listening, we're thinking, okay, this sounds promising. What are the practical steps? How do they actually implement this predictive layer based on what David Heath suggests?
He outlines 2 main paths organizations are taking. One way is to integrate their existing MFT gateway with a separate, specialized AI engine or platform, like a dedicated security analytics tool.
Okay, so the MFT system feeds data logs, events, maybe even network traffic copies.
Right, packet mirrors sometimes.
Yeah.
Feeds that data to this external system, which does the AI analysis
Yep.
and flags the anomalies back to the SOC or maybe even back to the MFT gateway for action.
Got it. What's the other way?
The other way, which is often simpler if it's available from your vendor, is activating a native anomaly detection plugin or feature directly within the MFT platform itself.
Ah, so if the MFT vendor has built this capability in.
Yes. As more vendors embed this AI capability directly into their gateway software, it can become much more straightforward, maybe just purchasing an additional license and configuring the built-in module.
That integrated approach definitely sounds more streamlined. Okay, so you get the system in place, whether separate or integrated. Is it just switch on and go?
Not quite. There's that initial learning period we talked about.
Right, the AI needs to learn normal.
Exactly. It needs to build that baseline model of your organization's unique behavioral pulse. David Heath mentions this usually takes somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay, a few weeks of observation.
Yeah. The system needs that time to observe your normal traffic patterns, who talks to whom, the volumes, the timing, the file types, all of it, before it can reliably start spotting statistically significant deviations.
Makes sense. And once it has learned normal, how do organizations typically set it up to respond? You mentioned that autonomous contain policy earlier. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a common and pretty effective approach. So when the AI detects an anomalous transfer that meets a certain high threshold of suspicion,
A high confidence alert, meaning it's very likely malicious or a serious policy deviation.
right, when it sees that, the system doesn't just send an alert and then wait for a human analyst to hopefully see it and react minutes or hours later. That's where the autonomous part is key.
It takes action itself, immediately.
Precisely. Based on the policy you've configured, it can take immediate steps to stop that potential threat while it's in progress.
Like what kind of steps?
It might involve placing a dynamic rate limit on just that anomalous transfer, slowing it down to a crawl. Or it might outright block and quarantine the transfer completely while it's happening.
While simultaneously alerting the team.
Yes. It takes the containment action and elevates that high confidence alert straight to the security team for investigation, explaining what it saw and what action it took.
So it actively interrupts the suspicious activity in real time without needing immediate human intervention, but ensures the humans are alerted to investigate and confirm. That seems to directly address the speed and response time problem.
It really does. And this policy also directly combats that false positive paralysis issue. By only taking autonomous action on those high confidence detections, it ensures that genuine violations or malicious behaviors get interrupted right away.
Preventing damage or data loss.
Exactly. Without constantly disrupting legitimate business by blocking transfers based on low confidence noise or insignificant deviations.
This really feels like a fundamental shift in capability. It's moving way beyond just reviewing logs after the fact to figure out what did happen.
That is David Heath's core conclusion, really. He summarizes it perfectly, saying AI fundamentally turns MFT monitoring from forensic bookkeeping.
Forensic bookkeeping, looking back at the records.
Right. Looking back at historical data to piece together an incident after it's occurred, it transforms it from that into live threat interdiction.
Live threat interdiction,
Yeah.
actively stopping threats as they happen. That phrase really captures the shift in value, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
By collapsing those detection times, from potentially hours or days down to seconds or minutes,
Yeah.
and by drastically slashing the analyst's workload tied up in chasing false alarms. These anomaly-driven gateways, as Heath argues, can truly demonstrate a clear ROI. They often pay for themselves quickly.
And give security teams that crucial breathing room.
Exactly. Breathing room to be more proactive, to focus on hardening systems, on strategic improvements, on hunting for hidden threats rather than constantly being buried in reactive alert triage.
Okay, so let's quickly recap the key insights from David Heath's article then. We've seen how AI lets MFT security move past the limits of static rules and that awful alert fatigue,
Right, by learning the unique behavioral pulse of an organization's file flows.
which allows it to spot subtle behavioral anomalies, those precursors that traditional methods just miss, giving seconds or minutes of vital early warning.
Crucial warning time against today's evolving threats. And we've seen there's a clear, quantifiable ROI story here.
Driven by two things mainly: the huge potential cost savings from preventing or shortening data breaches,
And the very real day-to-day operational efficiency gained by slashing false positives and freeing up analyst time.
understanding this shift, it feels like it's becoming essential knowledge for anyone involved with sensitive data transfer. Whether you're directly in security or managing IT infrastructure, or even on the business side, managing partner relationships that depend on secure MFT.
Recognizing the potential of this predictive layer seems vital for building genuinely resilient data defenses moving forward. It really shifts the focus, doesn't it?
Yeah.
From just having security controls to having controls that are intelligent, adaptive, and capable of real-time response.
It does. Which leads us nicely to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to mull over based on David Heath's analysis.
If training AI on normal behavior patterns is proving so effective at predicting subtle threats missed by human-defined rules in something relatively structured like file transfers, Where else could we apply this?
Where else might this kind of behavioral analysis help us anticipate risks before they escalate into full-blown incidents?
What are the broader implications, really, for systems right across the enterprise, moving from passively monitoring for known bad things to actively interdicting based on predicted anomalous behavior?
That's a fascinating question. Moving from reactive defense to predictive interdiction based on behavior, it feels like a concept with profound implications, well beyond just MFT security.